I'm recording with my iPhone accessory, which I haven't done since like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I noticed that the last thing that I recorded was the talking about how I wrote a letter to my sister. And just as an update, I did not receive any contact from her. And I don't know if she got the letter. I literally don't know. But I didn't get it back. So in other words, if you send a letter to a wrong address or whatever, and it's not the name, because it had her name on it, right? I think you get it sent back to you. So I think she got the letter. And she might have thrown it away. I don't know. It's funny to me to just cut off contact with somebody like that. But, whatever works, I guess, I just can't imagine that it really works for her. I think she's disturbed. But I don't know that, it's really been 5 years since I talked to her. I just know that she has a penchant for, I don't know what the diagnosis would be, but I know that she has this thing where she'll become righteously indignant and go into a rage at something that doesn't seem to make sense. And she's not violent, but she'll go into a rage, really angry. Like when I had an argument with her that I think it was the last time that we had dinner together. It's 2016. And we were talking about how Trump was elected. It was before he was inaugurated, And I didn't vote for him at that time. I voted for Jill Stein. But, we were talking about how our mom had or supported him. I don't think she even voted. Well, no, I don't, I might have taken her with me. She was so checked out at that point. But I think she might have voted for him, and it just, she blew up, and the ire was directed at me. I don't really remember that well, but that's just an example. And then I had zero money at that time. I don't think I had a credit card. I had a bank account with almost nothing in it. And I said to her, okay, I get that you're angry, but I don't have any money to get home. And she went into the ATM machine and she threw the money at me, really dramatic, fine, here's your money. So that part is sort of well, I don't know how much I need this person in my life, but at the same time, I only have one relative that I talk to, which is my other sister. So I don't have a big Italian family, whatever. I know so many people around here that have big families. They have a network of people. I don't. That's part of the reason I was trying to reach out to her. But I did not have my return address on intentionally. I told her, if you send me a letter, I won't read it. Because of her history. It has nothing to do with... It wasn't... And I think I made it clear, it had nothing to do with me being mad. I just didn't want to read a letter that would be a drag and bring me down for the rest of whatever day I read it. So I didn't have a return address on it. I had my name, but I didn't have a return address. But I told her, feel free to text me, because my number has been the same for 15 years. I don't remember how long. It might have been 20 years. It's been the same for a long time. So she knows my number. I was thinking about so I haven't been recording these, and I had 3 days to myself where I wasn't, afraid that I would be listened to or that someone would hear me or anything like that. And I didn't record anything. Um, I've been sort of dealing with this thing about like, how do I title the video so that it becomes successful, and at the same time, like, I don't really want a whole bunch of people to listen to these videos. Because I was thinking about that video that a friend of mine did, and it went viral, and I guess he's not able to collect revenue from it because it was too short. That doesn't make sense to me. But I hope he can collect revenue from it because it got so popular. But I was thinking about, well, why did it become so popular, and what am I doing differently? And it sort of occurred to me like, well, I'm sort of talking to myself, and I need to have like a catchy title, and then, but because the videos tend to be a little bit rambly, I can't do that. In other words, if I can have a catchy title, I can put some kind of interesting thumbnail, but it's disingenuous, and I don't like doing that to people. I'm not even talking about the negative feedback. I'm just saying I don't really like to do that. That's not something I would want to see. So, but it's not even so much that, oh, I'm jealous because somebody got 200,000 views on a video. It's more like I have this ambivalence about whether this becomes popular or not, because to be honest, I kind of know what you need to do. I've been watching YouTube for so long that's why. It's not because I'm some sort of expert. But I know generally like what to do, and if you talk about something that's current, you're automatically going to get into the algorithm. So like I did a video about Mamdani, and who just seems to be someone whose name people have a real hard time with. But what else is new? But like I hear a lot of the main mispronunciation is Mamdani. But I get the same thing with my name, and people mispronouncing it in a certain way that they've been doing ever since I was little. And when I was little, it used to bother me, because I was just sort of thinking like, I wonder if that bothers him. And I don't think it does. Like, I don't think he gives a shit. And I was like, well, it's sort of the same thing with me. Like, it doesn't really bother me anymore. I don't really even correct people, because it doesn't matter enough to me. But what does bother me is, so like I put out a video. YouTube is being mismanaged, and in my opinion. And it makes me almost miss Susan Wojcicki, however, speaking of mispronouncing, whatever her name was, the former CEO, and then she died, of YouTube, who I didn't particularly like. But I think YouTube is going on this thing of like, first of all, the shorts thing, which, if I could, I would block shorts. I can't. They won't let you do that. But they want YouTube to be like the next TikTok or something. A lot of these tech companies seem to have delusions about what they are, Like YouTube is YouTube, and it became popular because of what it is. And then they want to start being TikTok. And it's just not, it doesn't work. I mean, I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to say like, oh, they're harming their business by trying to do shorts. Like, maybe it makes them money in some way, but I don't think any people see it as being a short form content. Like it's all like it used to be, where YouTube videos couldn't be longer than 10 minutes, I think. Yeah, it was 10 minutes, and then if you wanted to do a longer video, you would just do a part 2. And I actually missed that time, because I think things were a little more user-friendly in a few different ways. But the point is, like, so I put up a video, like I have 330 something subscribers, right? So, but I consistently can put out something and it gets like 10 views or single digits, you know? So that means that something is wrong because people are subscribing and they're not. See, the thing is, if I think whoever's listening to this will probably know this, but I just know, just from my own experience, if you hover over, like, let's say you're on the YouTube homepage, you hover over a video with your mouse cursor, and it starts playing the preview. You can't hear it, but you start seeing the preview of it. You go into your history. According to YouTube, you've watched that video. So that counts as a view. And so I'm saying, like, the view counts are, like, weirdly low for the number of subscribers that I have. And I've seen that happening with people who have, like, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And it'll be like somebody who has 500K subs, whatever. And then they'll get a few thousand views. That means that their video is not being propagated. You know, it's not being properly served to the people that, if you subscribe to, I mean, there's a few different reasons. Like, you can sub to somebody because you feel sorry for the, like, I have these videos where I'm talking about, like, oh, I feel bad about myself and stuff. That's not my theme, but it's just something that I've talked about before. So somebody might be like, click subscribe because they feel sorry for me. I don't know if anyone has done that. I kind of hope not, but somebody could do that. But generally, if you subscribe to somebody, it's like, well, I find this person interesting in some way, and I like him or her, and I'm going to subscribe, and so that I can see what the next thing is that comes out. That feature is being sort of absconded with. That aspect of YouTube is being absconded with, so that, because it's starting to be where they only care about revenue. Now, in contrast with a company like Google, where they're on a downward path, it's inexorable. So I don't think there's a way back for them in terms of their search engine. They're dedicated to doing the strange and counterintuitive and unuser-friendly things that they're doing with their search engine, and I think they regard it as progress, or that it's going to make them money or whatever. In contrast, I think YouTube can come back, but I don't know that that's going to happen. It doesn't seem like they have interest in doing that. So, but what I'm saying is, like, I've been less motivated to do anything for like two, I guess, specific reasons, which is that when I put out a video, it's very obvious to me that it's not getting propagated to the people who are subscribing to me. I've heard people complain about that before. It just sounded kind of like complaining or whining to me. But it doesn't when you're experiencing it, So what's the point if I'm a slave to YouTube's, impenetrable algorithm that even the people making it don't really properly understand? I'm supposed to figure, Mr. Beast enjoys doing that, and that's fine. He likes to figure out how the algorithm works and make it so that his videos are oh, my cat's eating the butter. That I shouldn't have left that out. But anyway, Mr. Beast likes figuring out what makes videos popular and what do I need to tweak, to make my video the most popular. I'm not interested in doing that. I do these videos because I want to talk about something, and I kind of feel like I don't maybe have someone to talk about it with. So I have 330 subscribers. It feels like I might as well be almost like I was at the beginning of the year, where I had like 10 or 20 subscribers. because I feel like, and I'm not going to tell people like, remember to subscribe and ring that bell or whatever. And it's not even that I feel like I'm above that, but it's just like, it's kind of cheesy, and like, it's just not the way I'm doing this channel, you know? I'm not making any money from this, obviously. And speaking of which, that video that went viral for my friend, I think, you know, it's not an accident that they made that video viral, and yet he can't get revenue from it. It's not an accident on YouTube's part. So there's going to be more of that, where people have under 500 subs, which is the threshold for making money, and then their video gets X number of thousands of views, because that's free content for YouTube. They're making money from it, but you don't make money from it, you know? And that's the business model. That's literally TikTok's business model. And I'm not even really complaining in the sense that, like, it's kind of like being a rock star back in the 60s or 70s or something. Like, a lot of people would get screwed, but you and end up having enough money to survive, but not being rich in any way. And it's sort of like the trade-off is like, well, you're depending on this distribution system, and you want to be a star or whatever, and you want exposure, so you're willing to take the trade-off where you're getting a raw deal, you know, monetarily, but the trade-off is worth it because you want people to know who you are, you know. But yeah, that's what, you know, teased me off in particular, and specifically, is just the fact that, you know, I've got a bunch of subscribers, 330, and I know, like, you don't have to remind me, well, that's nothing, whatever. I'm talking about my own experience. 330 people. I don't know how many bots. I don't know. I really don't. But presumably it's real people. So you got that many people subscribing to me, and it's very easy for me to put out a video that gets 9 views, and there's something wrong when that's happening. So YouTube is not doing their job. That's how I feel about it. So it makes it's a disincentive for me to do these. And then the other thing is, like, I feel like, again, I have this mixed feeling about, like, you know, I do want videos to get popular and, like, feel good about that. Oh, cool, it's got 1,000 views or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's cool. But at the same time, you know, like I've said this before, and it's not an exaggeration, it's literally the way I feel. If I could just make these YouTube videos where I could say, okay, YouTube, these videos are accessible to anyone outside of Long Island, anyone in the country, except where I live and Long Island generally, you know, whatever. And if it had to be a state thing, I would just choose New York State. But, you know, that's what I would be comfortable with, but I can't do that. And it's getting to the point where I feel like I can't. It got to this point a little while ago where I feel like I can't talk about certain things. So, but I'm still pretty open anyway. You know, people have kind of told me, like, why are you talking about that? And I'm just sort of like, well, because people are exhausted, you know, and they're exhausted with the fake news media. It doesn't matter. Again, we have this, we're living in a sort of dream-like construction where it's left versus right, and I am a shit lib who is talking about how great trans rights are, and then on the other side it's like the person who's pro-life and he's conservative or whatever. And meanwhile, a lot of these people that are supposedly on opposite ends of the spectrum care about a lot of the same things, but the main point is that they're getting screwed by the system in the same way. So like you can talk about like you don't like it when, and I don't either. Like when people talk about late stage capitalism, I'm just thinking like, well, you don't know, you heard a buzzword and now you're running with it because you're upset, because you feel that you're being screwed. And another person like who's like a conservative will be like, well, capitalism is the only thing that's brought us, prosperity or something like that. And they have their own point, but they're also getting screwed by the way that the money system is in this country right now, which doesn't follow my conception of capitalism. They call it socialism for the rich, and it's just so easy to get more and more rich if you already have money. And I think, if you're Bill Gates, if you're a rich person, you don't want people to know that. That's something that you'd rather divide and conquer. It makes it a lot more convenient if you're in that upper echelon. But yeah, so I had like this ambivalence of like, well, I want to record a video about, and I have for really since Mamdani won. I wanted to make a video. Now it's late, and it's not like irrelevant or whatever, but like I kept thinking like, well, I don't really like my videos to be longer than 20 minutes for a couple of reasons. I think it's a little bit onerous for the person listening. Not necessarily, like some people really like to listen to long videos and, you listening to it while you're doing your laundry or something and you're not really listening. Or like my online friend, and he was telling me that he listened to them at 2x speed, and I thought he was exaggerating. And then he told me, he was like, no, that's literally what I listened to it at. And the funny thing is, I had already sort of toyed with that idea, like speeding up certain videos. And now I do it pretty regularly with certain people. And also like if I'm feeling like it's a longish video, but I want to hear it, but not take 20 minutes to hear the whole thing or whatever. So now I've started doing that, but there's nothing that I listen to on 2x because that's, I guess I'm slow or whatever. That's too fast for me unless it's somebody who's really talking slow, But there's this guy, the functional melancholic. I used to like him, and I think that's a clever name, but he talks about the same thing over and over and over. But the point is, like, he talks in a really slow cadence, and he's very popular. I don't know if people are listening to him at regular speed or if they're speeding it up. But I can't I can't dwell on what is wrong with my videos, because again, I just sort of do what I do, which is talk to myself, and then other people are listening. So again, like I was thinking about this friend who had that video, and I thought I was just thinking about, I wonder what made it so popular, because I can think of a couple of reasons. But at the same time, so in other words, like if I were just a normal guy, I would think, oh, well, he did this. I'm going to emulate what he did because that video got so popular. But I don't do that because, first of all, there's a part of me that doesn't want these videos to become popular. And second of all, it's difficult for me to just literally talk about one thing. And it's the main thing that people have complained about in terms of my videos. They say like get to the point, and I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's like a misguided complaint or whatever. Like if you feel that way, that's fine. But when I do these videos, like I'm talking to whoever wants to listen, and I'm not gonna just sort of go, well, Charlie Kirk, and this is why I think that, this is what I think about it, I tend to meander a little bit, and it's just a conversational style. Again, I might start writing these because I'm a better writer than a speaker. But right now, that's not what I'm doing. So, but yeah, like I could have done this. Like I wanted to do a video about it, but I knew that I was stopping myself because I was like, well, I don't know, like I'm gonna screw it up, and I'm gonna talk about something else, and then I'm not gonna want to edit it, and then people are gonna complain, and it's just. But I realize now that I just have to deal with it. So what I wanted to talk about was, after that rather lengthy introduction. But yeah, so like I said, it's frustrating to have X number of subscribers and to know that YouTube it doesn't seem to matter, it matters very little. What matters is the algorithm. I'm not working for the algorithm. I don't particularly care what YouTube thinks will go off, So it's just not the way it's not the way I'm doing this anyway. But yeah, so Mamdani one, I wanted to draw a comparison because again, I think, I do think that the left has gone kind of nuts, and that I don't even know who they really represent. To me, when I think of the left, and I still need to do a video about this, why I don't align with them and why I don't like their message or lack of message, really. I tend to think of the left as people who are they're aggrieved, like, this is bad, rich people are bad, America is bad because it's the most powerful country. Again, it's what Ted Kaczynski was talking about in his manifesto. I read it and then I deleted that, or I put it on private because I didn't think it wasn't strong enough somehow. But Ted Kaczynski wrote a manifesto, obviously, but the first part of it was he was describing the psychology of the left. And I just thought, oh my God, like I've never seen it laid out like this. Like he's just saying everything that's true. And it's funny because like those people, I think if you were to force like Robert Reich or whatever random shitlib to read that, the best they could do is sort of acknowledge it on some level, but just keep doing what they're already doing. They wouldn't see it as a criticism, like a well-founded criticism. Or they might even agree with it, like, well, yeah, that is what I am, But yeah, so I think of the left as like sort of grievance culture and, tearing down things that are beautiful or strong. And it's like, why are we doing this? Shouldn't the things that are beautiful or strong be venerated? The whole idea of the left is like to look out for the marginalized person. But I think that's sort of fallen by the wayside, in my opinion, to a large extent. But for the most part, I think you got these two factions, and people are saying, well, the left is going crazy, and then, left people are calling, at least in the mainstream media, anybody who has a criticism, and a valid one, especially if it's valid, they'll say that you're far right, So we have this divide where we're making it like people on the left and the right are totally in two different worlds. And it's in my opinion, it's misguided. That I don't think that's what's happening. We have an economically depressed situation where the rich people don't, for the most part, what I've seen is you got someone like Ray Dalio who sort of acknowledges it, but he sort of acknowledges it, but then he doesn't really want to take a step, like we need to do something, or he certainly doesn't have a plan or anything. But for the most part, if you're rich, if you're Elon Musk, if you're Steve Jobs, or no, Bill Gates, it's not a concern for Steve Jobs. You want to keep the money that you have, and these people are also usually a little bit delusional. Like it seems like they don't understand where they got lucky, and that it wasn't just like, I was working really hard and you were just doing a shift at 7-Eleven, but I was starting my own business and I was working 18 hours a day. It seems like that's the narrative that their internal narrative, and they're not seeing the forest for the trees. But yeah, so you got Mamdani, and then you got Trump. And they are totally different people. But the main point is that they're totally different on the political spectrum. Mamdani calls himself a socialist. I don't even know if he really knows what that means. And then you've got Trump, who calls himself a Republican, and by the way, he's not really exactly a Republican, in my opinion. Not what would traditionally be thought of that way. And I wanted to explain why people voted for Mamdani, because I think I saw a video with Lionel Nation. I don't remember what his last name is, but that's the channel. And he was saying that a lot of his conservative friends have Mamdani derangement syndrome, and I was like, wow, it's not that clever, but I was like, yeah, that is sort of like what's happening. I think I don't agree with a lot of the things that Mamdani was putting forth. Free bus rides, like just certain things that don't make sense to me. But anyway, so I'm going to draw a comparison, and I'm going to show what I think is very similar in the energy between Mamdani and Trump, even though that might seem a little bit strange. But so there was a time in 2015, I think it might have been the first Republican primary debate, the one where it was like literally 15 people on the stage. At some point in the debate, I don't remember if it was at the end. For some reason, I'm remembering it that way. I think it might have been in the beginning. Whatever. It was sometime in that debate. They were going around. The moderator asked a question: if you lose this primary and you're voted out, you're voted off the island, whatever, do you take an oath not to run as an independent? And the whole idea behind that question is, if you then run as an independent, you're kind of screwing it up for the Republican because you're splitting the votes, And they all, they were going from person to person, and each person was like, yes, I take that oath. I promise I will not run as an independent. And then they asked Trump, and Trump was like, I'm not going to promise that. Yeah, if I lose this primary, I might run as an independent. I don't know. I'm not following your rules energy. And people viscerally respond to it. The media is telling you what to think. You should hate Trump because he did that. But really, first of all, he's representing himself, but he's also saying, I want to run for president to help people. I have an agenda. I'm America first, which turns out is partially true. But so then the media tells you, like, you're supposed to not like Trump because he didn't promise to not run as an independent. And meanwhile, people who aren't zombie-like and they're not brainwashed, they'll think, well, fuck you. I'll think what I think. And I think that he had balls to do that. I don't think he was a terrible person for saying that he might run as an independent. And in the recent, this was, so flash forward 11 years later, I guess, or no, 10 years later. I don't know why I suddenly thought we were in 2026. time is sort of meaningless for me. It's like I heard a story about Prince. I don't know if it was true, but I so admired this when I heard it. I heard that Prince, and this is being an eccentric rich person, I get that, but like I thought it was cool anyway. But like that he used to have clocks, on the various clocks on the walls of his house, and they were all wrong. In other words, he was expressing this idea that time is sort of like this, it's a construct in a way, and that's how time feels to me sometimes. Like I've said this before, but I feel like I live in a time warp, and everything after the year 2000 is sort of like it's new to me. And that's a little bit embarrassing to say, like, oh, you're old and you don't understand that, like, what's relevant now. And it's like, well, no, I kind of do, but for me, things have just kind of gotten worse since then. So for me, that's sort of like some sort of time in some weird way stopped around the year 2000. But anyway, so in this, in a few months ago, mayoral primary debate, I don't know, there were like 7 people, and Mamdani was up there, and the moderator asked question, what country will you first visit as mayor of New York? And I'm just thinking, like, wait, why is this a question? But from the answers, I think maybe you can glean why that was a question. So, you got people saying, I'm going to visit Ukraine because I'm a good boy, I'm a good girl, and I know what the media wants to hear me say, and I know what the corporate overlords are. And then, you get Cuomo saying, I think it's imperative that we visit Israel, and that would be my first visit is to Israel. And so he's a good boy. And then they get to Mamdani, and he says, well, I don't plan to visit any country when I plan to stay in New York and look after New Yorkers. And so that became a thing where, like, first of all, that's already like a little bit going against the grain, but it's nothing weird. Like, he's just saying, he's kind of doing like a press opportunity thing where it's like, oh, well, he said something different, and he's so, he's such a New Yorker that he doesn't care about going to other countries. He cares about staying in New York so he can tend to the problems of the city. But then it turns into this thing. I think the moderator then quickly followed up, would you ever visit Israel? And he said, and he had a very quick response. He said, I don't think it's necessary to visit Israel to understand Jewish people's problems in the city and to try to address them. So no, I'm not going to be. And then Cuomo sort of chimed in, he won't visit Israel. Like he's a tough guy. He's so tough because he's pointing out that Mamdani isn't, completely cucked by the media. But that's, again, this is why people didn't like Cuomo, because Cuomo is working for the corporate overlords. He's working for the globalists. And by doing what Mamdani, so that's my comparison. So that takes balls. It might not seem like it does, but on some level, you're saying, no, I don't go along with this whole Israel first thing. No, thank you. That was what Mamdani was saying, whatever you think of his politics. So to me, that's very similar energy to what Trump did in that first debate. I think it was the first debate. Did he know what he was doing? Yeah. I'm not saying he's like a pure and good-hearted person for doing that. I'm saying people viscerally respond to that, and people are tired of bullshit. And is Mamdani full of shit to some extent? Yes, I think so. But he's saying people want to hear a politician, someone who's supposedly going to represent them, talk about their problems. They don't want to hear about how much more money we need to give to Ukraine and how much more money we need to give to Israel. That's not what people are wanting to hear. And it's very weird because politicians keep doing this, and it's almost at a point where the politicians, their public addresses are for corporate entities, for global entities, for the IMF or whatever it is, for the WEF, for the WTO, World Trade Organization. These different entities who fund these politicians and the lobbies and stuff. So it feels at this point like when you hear a politician talking, they're not really talking. Politicians have always been, to various degrees, pandering and, not completely truthful, that saying what people want to say, right? Like that's what people know politicians as doing. But it used to be where politicians would speak to the people like, okay, free lunch, whatever, something that will appeal to people, or free bus rides or whatever. And then people would go like, yeah, I like that idea, free bus rides. I'm going to vote for that guy. Now it's become where you see like Gavin Newsom, whoever it is, and they're talking. They're not trying to please people who would vote for them. They're trying to please corporate entities. They're trying to give the talking points that corporate entities and global organizations want to hear, not people. And Mamdani went and Trump did the same thing. Turns out it's more complicated than that because he very much has to please various entities. But, people are viscerally responding to Mamdani talking about the fact that people are struggling, and they are. And there's a certain class of people that I don't even know. I don't know what to call it, but it is straight up related to how much money you have. So Mamdani isn't out there speaking to corporate entities, whether you like what he's saying or not. He's talking to people. He's saying, yes, free bus rides because you're struggling. Whereas Cuomo will say something about, gay people or something that's amorphous and sort of meaningless, His talking points are for the lobbies and the corporate interests. They're not directed at people. People in the city, again, the whole grift is you're going to be a rich person and you're going to talk about how much you love gay people and black people and how sexism is a problem or whatever, sexism generally or misogyny or something. And if you're really unsophisticated, you're going to be like, oh, that's great. I think it's great that Bill Gates is against racism or whatever politician, I think it's great that Gavin Newsom is against racism, and that's going to be good enough for you. But at the same time, there's a growing wealth inequality that's sort of destroying the fabric of the country. And so he's an outsider, obviously, and I hear people. There's a certain type of conservative that is a little bit hysterical when it comes to the fact that he's Muslim. I don't know. I see the person. So I'm looking at the way he talks. I'm looking at the fact that he has a hot wife who's like an art school girl, and I'm looking at the what's it called, the gestalt. That was the word I was trying to think of. I'm looking at the gestalt there. I don't see him wearing a turban. He dresses like a normal American. I don't think there's going to be a bait and switch, some kind of thing, like he becomes some weird extremist Muslim and then wants women to wear burqas on the street. There's no indication of that, and I think for the most part, that's when you get the conservatives on TV like Bill O'Reilly. Like, I think that's a pretense. I don't think they even think that. I just think they don't like him because he's not representing corporate interests. I don't think it really even has that much to do with whether he's Muslim or Jewish or whatever religion. So my whole thing about Mamdani winning is people are tired of politicians speaking for corporations and corporate interests. And that's what Trump didn't do, and that's what Mamdani didn't do, whether you like what he said or not. And it's refreshing to people. And I was thinking, I'm going to draw another comparison. There was a thing with, I used to watch E3. I'm weird because I keep up with video games, even though I don't really play them. I'm trying to play them a little bit more just to have a distraction, But there was a period of years where I basically just didn't play video games, but I still kept up with them. And I would look forward every year to E3. And it got more and more corporate and more like, what the fuck are we even doing? Are you trying to get people excited about video games or pissed off? Like, what are you doing? And then I realized at some point, I was like, oh, wait a second. I'm so stupid. This isn't to get people excited about this isn't even a showcase for video games. This is people coming out and telling, it's a presentation for the corporate entities. And it's saying, this is what we're doing. We're going to have a girl boss in this new video game because we know you initiated some DEI thing. Our new console is going to be like, you can watch TV at the blink of an eye, and you can watch YouTube. And meanwhile, people are thinking, okay, that's nice, and it's because they're not, they stopped. It stopped being about video games, and it started being about, okay, this is the Xbox. It's the new water cooler. You can watch sports and TV and YouTube, and it has nothing to do with games. And it's because the corporations were changing their business model to something like, well, video gaming doesn't really matter, or it's just like we need more microtransactions, and it's about money. So they were like doing their calculations, as to what matters, and good games is not really part of their calculus. In a way, it is sort of it's I don't want to say it's an afterthought, but it's sort of like a secondary thing, like the other stuff is what really gets the revenue, I guess, like microtransactions and somebody playing a mobile game where they have to keep buying something in order to move forward, like an old video game where you just have to, it's really hard, so you have to keep putting in quarters, almost something like that in a way. And it became, the corporations ended up figuring out that, like, if you buy a video game and you really enjoy that video game, all you did was spend $50 on it. So they think they're losing out because everything's about money. This is a very dangerous road that we're going down, with money being everything. Like, that's what matters, is money. How much money you have. You are what you owe. That's the be-all, end-all. Isn't this what, like, Jesus warned about? And then, I don't know, whatever. So, but the point is, like, those presentations, the E3 thing, started to be a corporate event. And then somebody might say, it was always a corporate event. Okay, yeah, kind of. But it was also about getting people hyped to play some new video game that was going to have, great graphics, or it was going to have multiplayer or something, whatever it was, or it was just going to be something novel, and it stopped being about that. Now, I think it's sort of similar with how politicians are today. When I hear Gavin Newsom or Cuomo or whatever, it doesn't really matter that much about Republican versus conservative or Republican versus Democrat. It's like when I hear these people talking, they're talking to corporations. I'm a good boy. I'm going to do, in exchange for money, I'm going to govern the way you told me to. And Mamdani represents another path, whatever. He represents going away from that, So, again, this whole left versus right thing, it's somewhat of a distraction. It's not completely fake, but when you have the wealth disparity getting worse and worse and worse, and for the rich people, they think, what do you mean worse? Better. I'm making more money. I want to own everything. I want to start buying farmland. I want to buy your house. What are you willing to take for it? Unfortunately, I have to agree to your price, but I want to have your house. I want to own your house, People that just want to own everything. It's weird to me because I didn't, first of all, it wasn't raised that way, but also I kind of feel like we're all just one, we're all sort of one. So I don't want to seem like I'm so much better, but I will say that it's not the way I think about the world is if I could just own a building in New York and, if I could just boss this many people around, I would feel happy. It's not generally the way that it's not my perspective, but I think, so in other words, I'm saying it was a surprise to me growing up, there's a lot of people who really feel that way. They want to boss the maximum number of people around that they can, and they want to own as much as they can. So this increasing wealth disparity and people who work for a living, they're just trying to they are. I mean, it's a talking point, but they're trying to get by. People who are working and they don't want to be nervous about their car possibly breaking down. If money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys a certain level of security, so that if you are trying to function in society and you have to have a car, then you need the money to, repair it if something goes wrong. There's a whole large, contingent of people in this country. It's not insignificant. It's large. And it's getting larger, of people that are working for a living and they can barely pay for the shit that they need to survive. So as long as you have people in the upper echelons that seem to think everything is fine, while there's a huge worker base of 30%? I don't know what percent to put on it, but of people that are struggling, it's not sustainable. And I don't know what we're doing about it. I mean, look, Mamdani, you might not like him, but at least he's saying things like free government-run grocery store. The whole idea is, controlling the prices. And I don't think that's a winning strategy, but at least he's saying something like, okay, we'll do this because no one else is doing anything, Everyone else is just talking. I heard the other day, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw Trump doing a presentation that really pissed me off. It was recent. It was not even a week ago. I don't remember what the event was for, but he was talking about how well the stock market was doing. And I just thought, whoa, that's tone deaf as hell. What does it matter how good the stock market is doing to people who have to work for a living? And they don't have enough money to buy stocks because they need their money that they have. Although I do think he cares about America, and that's why I voted for him. But things are becoming a little bit more complicated now, because even though he comes across as someone who does what he wants, it's that's not, he would never have become as successful as he was if he operated that way. Everybody has to answer to someone, and he has to answer to certain people that probably aren't thinking America first. But yeah, so Mamdani represents a different path. Do I think he's going to be a successful mayor? I really don't know, but I don't think things are going to go nuts. I do think the crime rate is, unfortunately, it's probably going to go up. And I hate to say this, but that's good for me, because that means the property values go a little bit down. And I grew up in the city, and I grew up around, I don't want to say high crime, but I knew sort of like what to avoid, and I didn't get freaked out about that kind of stuff. I grew up there were homeless people around, and not harmless homeless people. Some of them were, but some of them were a little bit dangerous. So you just have to learn how to navigate that. And I'm not saying that means that you'll always be safe. I'm just saying that you kind of need to know how to carry yourself and stuff. So if the crime rate goes up and the property levels, whatever, values go down, it's good for me to possibly move into the city. And I don't like what the city has become. I've said this before. I really don't. A place for foreign investment, for trust fund kids, for people from Europe that have money, for quantitative financial, whatever the fuck, people that are on Wall Street. And then again, somebody might say, well, that's always been, there's always been a contingent of like people working on Wall Street, and New York was a financial center, but it also had a bohemian side. It also had a working class side. And I'm talking about Manhattan, okay? Basically. I mean, partly talking about the whole city, but like you go into Staten Island, whatever, Queens, there's definitely working class people, but usually it's like they're some kind of family unit, But so I see that sliding and slipping away. And to me, it seems like the rich people, it just seems like they don't really care very much. And I'm talking not even about like whether they care about poor people. I'm talking about whether they care that the city seems to be becoming less interesting and less culturally interesting and bohemian, and more like, let's go to this rich restaurant where everything is white and glass and neutered and boring. But it's fine with me because it's a status symbol, I don't know. So that's why I think Mamdani got elected, and I am happy he got elected. I think it's a middle finger to New York from the people of New York. That's how I look at it. I don't know whether he'll be successful. I think it's going to be a lot less disastrous than all the conservatives on the radio and TV were warning against, but I guess we'll see. Have a nice day. Thanks for listening.